Holding out for us here at the Nürburgring Nordschleife, just had Johannes Scheid driving a tribute lap to Sabine Schmitz in the 1996 overall winning BMW E36. Great to see that car back out on the Nordschleife. It's on its way back at the moment, being headed by one of the course cars. Sabine, just 51 years old when she died earlier this year. Undisputed queen of the Nordschleife, but frankly, just a great person and a great driver. It was a great pleasure and honour to have worked with her a couple of times, as I did with a couple of Top Gear live shows that I was involved with when we co-presented, myself, Tiffany Dell and her. And we had a ball both in the presentation and hanging around telling stories afterwards. Always had a smile on her face. Ultimate competitor, ultimate entertainer, and much missed by everybody, not just here at the Nürburgring Nordschleife. Fantastic to see that car going around, and the marshals paying their own tribute to Sabine. The team that she founded with her business and life partner Klaus Abel and Fricatelli Racing have had a cracking start to the opening rounds of the Nürburgring long distance, the Langstrecke series this year. They've been quick in the openings here, opening qualifying as well here, and the tributes have poured in the last few months to the driver from just down the road, who along with her sister modified the family BMW, including putting a cage in and running it on semi-slick tyres on the local roads. Sabine told me a great story where, unbeknownst to Sabine and her sister, her mum decided to nip down to the hairdressers one time, and it started to rain on the way down, not really knowing how much work had gone into the family BMW and what tyres it was sitting on, which certainly weren't suitable for the wet conditions on the local roads. And Sabine had to get a lift down there to bring her mum back, because her mum had frightened herself witless before her hair appointment. Much missed, Sabine. Great to see your team doing well. So we head then, just coming up to 6:30, into what is brilliantly called top qualifying. Peter Mackay and Bruce Jones join us. Peter, you've been browsing through the regulations. Talk us through what we're about to see.
Well, you're about to see the best drivers in the world in the best prepared cars in the world go out on the best circuit in the world and lay it all on the line. There is a heck of a lot at stake on the show here in this Q1 session. There are 4 spots up for grabs in the top 20 shootout, just 4, and we have a lot of very, very fast cars. I mean, in the pro class, we've got the number 2 Audi, the number 6 and number 8 Mercedes. We've got the number 15 Audi Sport Team Phoenix R8. We've got the KTMG Porsche. We've got both of the Falcon Motorsports Porsches, and I think we've seen how fast both of those cars are, so they've got a strong chance of getting 1, maybe even 2 of those 4 spots. And well, that makes it very, very narrow indeed for a lot of the other cars. So there's going to be 4 very happy teams, and there's going to be a lot more very unhappy teams to miss out on that top 20 shootout.
Given that all the drivers that we've spoken to in our previews, Bruce, and in the early part of the week when we were talking to Klaus Bachler, Falcon Motorsports came on as we started our broadcast on Thursday, they've all said how important it is to be at the front of the field, somewhat unusually so in a 24-hour race. How hard dare these guys push with the start of the race, of course, tomorrow afternoon? An accident here could have big consequences.
You certainly won't become friends with your mechanics. You'll lose the friendship you built up if you drop the car here. But I think what we've got to focus on now, John, of course, there's the prestige for pole, not just for the manufacturers, but for the drivers too. It's their shop window. You know, they might want to have another works contract coming their way for 2022. But right now, I think we've just got to focus on this first of 2 qualifying sessions and see which of the we've got 16 teams that are already qualified for qualifying session number 2. And as Peter says, only 4 more spots to play for. And I think we've probably got just over 20 cars going for those 4 spaces. And that does include some of the very quickest cars so far. The car that was fastest last night, the FFF racing team, Lamborghini, that is in the mix. And as a couple of the Walk and Horse Motorsport Bmw M6s, they too are in the mix, but they've got to get out there. There's a lot of time, and they've got to get a lap on the board. The advantage for everybody at the moment is the track is dry at the outset, so huge focus. But of course, on this outlap, it's a sighter lap as much as anything, because we've had a fairly mixed bag of weather so far, but it's really odd to look down the list of those that haven't got through to the final shootout, who are really, really well placed to do so on paper, but paper doesn't count. It's what they can deliver when they're out there on the circuit.
Yeah, I always like when people say, oh, listen, I've looked at the track map. That's on paper. That's a reasonably easy track to drive. Yeah, but we're not driving it on paper. This is not a dice and pencil game. This is a real battle out there. Rather threatening clouds down towards turn 1 and across the paddock, which is generally speaking where the weather comes from at the Nürburgring. Cast your mind back to Formula 1 and that extraordinary sight of the grid being engulfed with a wall of water coming up from turn 1 to them a few years ago. So surprised nobody who'd been to the Nürburgring for N24, in fairness. Now, the cars go around to pull up on their spots on the front straight for the shootout, and the number 15 Audi Sport Team Phoenix R8 already there, being put into the line on driver's left.
Just to point out, John, this is potentially one of the quickest cars, but it's not made the cut as yet. So big pressure. Listen to the lineup. Matthias Trudi, Robin Freitz, Frank Stippler, winner here before, and Dries van Tor, who won 2 years ago with Stippler. Huge pressure on their shoulders because they're one of the cars that should be in the mix, and they're not yet.
Wochenspiegel, Ferrari having a tyre change on the pit. So the cars... Now, this is for the first time in the N24 session. We have the removal of the road cones on the first part of the front straight. So, as the cars come around the Grand Prix circuit out of the pit lane and take their positions drivers left on the start-finish line, where they will be flagged away at intervals, there's no guard, if you will, there. So when they finish their lap, they will come back around and into the pits the back way. And of course, during the race, they will be able to enter the pits from that transition loop through, or the cut through between the Nordschleife itself at the end of the lap and the front straight. Quite a lot of the cars, teams have brought out the air bottles and they've put the cars up on jacks straight away and took the tyres off. I've got to say, gentlemen, that is a very, very scary looking sky, Bruce, beyond the Mercedes arena out towards what would have been the old Südschleife. Some of that's still there, of course. Still have a classic events down there using some of the public roads and the bits that are in the car park, but we lost a bit of it when the Grand Prix circuit was built and the road was built down there. But that does not look good weather coming towards us.
Well, you said they'd removed the cones, they'd also removed the blue sky, and you can call it any colour you wish, but I'd go for somewhere between charcoal and gunmetal, and changing all the time, but rather sadly, not in a good direction. Ho, 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 a little more pressure on the drivers. as if there's not enough in this one-by-one shootout around the circuit. And let's face it, for all the drivers concerned, barring a problem for another car, should be the only time they drive the circuit all weekend when they don't have to go past the production class cars. So no excuses of traffic getting in the way. Just heaps the pressure a little bit more on the shoulder of these absolutely fantastic drivers. But you know what? This is why they're racing drivers, John. They love the pressure.
Love it.
Sometimes it feels a bit much, but this is their chance to shine.
Nothing like a driver feeling like he can make a difference on a track. I saw a set of Goodyear wets being taken out there for one of the Ferraris. So they clearly are worried about the weather. Hankook slicks going back over the wall for another team. And I think we're going to see people, that's a brand new set of Michelin slicks coming out. So they would transport tyres, if you will, on the cars round their, not even formation lap, but to get to the grid. The skies at the moment are tremendously scary looking. And the helicopter pilot having to come lower and lower. The Glickenhaus getting some new Michelin slick rubber on the 704. That's the 004C. Now, new rear wing on that. Balance of performance changed a little bit earlier in the week for them. They were dynoing that car as late as Wednesday for the organisers to be able to calculate the BOP. And if you are just joining us, Peter, there were some BOP changes overnight from the two qualifying sessions yesterday to today. Who did that affect at the sharp end of the field?
Well, it's quite curious. When we look at SP9, the top GT3 cars, the Audi R8 was given a 10 kilogram weight addition, so up from 1,295 kilograms to 1,305. However, it did get a 6 horsepower lift by way of a slightly wider air restrictor on its 5.2 litre naturally aspirated V10. However, what I found about all things being equal really for the Audi. Interestingly though, the BMW, last year's winner, don't forget, the BMW M6 had a 5 kilogram reduction, so bringing it down to 1,340 kilograms, but also a rise in maximum turbo boost. Now, I didn't see anything wrong with the pace of the BMWs last night, or any of yesterday, so let's see what they've got up their sleeve. The Porsche staying exactly as was, so... and also the Mercedes as well. Now, the Mercedes have been off the pace. They're probably... as the sessions we've seen so far, they've been about 2 seconds off the pace on average. Will that flip on its head now when we get into qualifying? Well, we're about to find out, if we get dry running, that is.
Okay, so WTM powered by Phoenix will go first. The number 22 Ferrari 488 at GT3. The sign went up a wee while ago to clear the grid. Helfer raus basically means helpers off. Off you go. You're allowed to have one person with the car, so there can be no more tyre changes now, and that's slick Michelin rubber on the Wochenspiegel number 22. 1 minute. The board is up at the front of the field. It's an absolute lottery at the moment, but the old adage in motor racing is you have to go for the prevailing conditions. And on the start-finish line now, and probably, and you can only ever say probably for the Nordschleife, and probably for the Nordschleife, it is still dry. It's not raining. That's what you've got to do. It'll be Dries Vanthoor who takes the Audi Sport Team Phoenix number 15 around. So these cars, Peter, are currently outside the top shootout positions, and they are shooting for what, 4 positions?
Yeah, that's it. 4. And you look at that queue of cars. There is absolutely 5-star world-class talent and cars there as well. Look at this: the Wochenspiegel Ferrari, then the BMW M6 Junior team, both of the Falcon Porsches, the Phoenix Audis. I mean, there's going to be some very high-profile drivers parking up for the night after this.
Daniel Kalvitz takes away the Wochenspiegel, powered by Phoenix Ferrari 488. It's Augusto Farfus for BMW Junior Team. Then the Goodyear Shod Ferrari, the blue car, heading off. So 22 and 77. They started at intervals. It was in the number 14 car. I think it was Stefan Kohler, was it? Yes, it was Stefan Kohler who heads off. Then it'll be Sven Müller, Mathieu Vaxivière next up. So Kohler for the Hella Pagid Racing 1 Ferrari, Sven Müller for the Rapid Falcon Motorsports 44, Mathieu Vaxivière for AMG Team Get Speed, Charles Espelon for CP Racing. Then it's going to be, that was Phil Ellis's helmet behind the wheel of his car. You know it's Dries Van Toor in the 9. Yeah, Phil Ellis for Space Drive Racing, that's the SPX. So that is a GT3 Mercedes, but without any physical connection between the steering wheel and the steering rack. I know, at the Nürburgring. Audi Sport Team Phoenix, it was Dries Van Toor, Conor de Filippi with the red, white and blue of America for Rover Racing's number 98 BMW. 10th will be Klaus Bachler for Falcon Motorsport. So both the Falcon cars have yet to qualify into Q2 top qualifying here, and they were uber quick earlier on today in the number 350 Black Falcon Team Identica car. That car has just rolled off the grid, and behind the wheel of that car it's Carlos Rivas, Luxembourg driver, who will take that car, that Porsche number 350, around in 12th position. Oh my goodness, this is awesome stuff, isn't it? In 12th position, the number 18, that's another Porsche. That's just rolled away from the starting line. That's the KCMG GT3R. Josh Burden will drive that car. Falcon Horster in there as well with the 101. And that is another BMW, of course. That is Christian Cronjes behind the wheel of that. Mauro Engel for Mercedes Team AMG RT number 6. Christopher Haase for Audi Sport Team Car Collection. As Peter said, big names here, ladies and gents. Falcon Horse, Sammy Matty Trogan, the man who we know so well from online racing, gets the nod to do effectively one lap qualifying. Patrick Niederhauser for Lion Speed by Car Collection, the Audi R8 number 24. Marco Appelli for Hankook Triple F Racing Team. That was super quick, that car, the Lamborghini Huracan. Jelmer Berman for the 10Q Racing Team Hauer Lamborghini Huracan, Mercedes AMG. And 20th is Felipe Fernandez Laser for Glickenhaus. So neither of the SPX cars have qualified as of right. Marvellous stuff. They all set off at intervals, just like the Isle of Man TT or a rally stage. With any luck, you won't get side-by-side racing, and we don't want to see that now. What we want to see is how these guys progress. Onto the Nordschleife.
John, are we going to see any drops of rain on the windscreen?
Correct.
Those who set off early in the run are going to have more of an advantage if it does fall. They get more of the track under their wheels when the track is dry. So far, so good. But definitely with a sky that's almost black, it's a very, very big possibility.
I didn't see, Pete. I saw wet weather tyres being brought out, but I'm not sure I saw anybody go on to wet weather tyres. And I don't think you can take that gamble right now unless you've got somebody out at the bridge down by Adenauer or somewhere like that and who says it's tipping down of rain here. You can't take that chance, can you?
I think you're right. You would need that almost like a spotter out there at the other end of the circuit. But even then, there's such a large portion of it that's dry. No, I think that everyone on slick tyres here But I tell you what, being at the front of the queue could prove absolutely critical. There is 2 flying laps for each driver, but I don't know if they're going to get the second flying lap, quite honestly. This weather looks absolutely apocalyptic that's coming in. So you can see the drivers, they're getting up to pace to get the heat into the tyres, of course. But I think they're wanting to get this lap in. I think it's going to be get those laps in, because this rain can come at any moment. And if you're one of the drivers at the back of the queue, it's going to be tight. It's going to be very tight, isn't this? We're not even racing yet, and this is just brilliant.
Exactly, and that's a good point, because at the moment the drivers aren't pushing because they're not on the clock. This is the formation lap, the warm-up lap, if you will. The Glickenhaus is the quickest through the first 3 sectors, but that counts for absolutely nothing because they haven't started a flying lap yet. This is a prep lap, if you will. And by the way, there's nothing to stop you pushing hard if you're further down the queue. And if you can overtake, you're allowed to overtake. There's nothing that says you have to stay in your positions. There's nothing to say that if you're the first man in the queue, you don't park the car up and let anybody go by you. I doubt, with the weather looking as threatening as it is, that will happen. But what we're looking at the moment, if you're a team, is what's the weather like over there, guys? You're speaking to your driver now, Dries van Teurs, just heading up the hill to the Caracciolo Carousel. If he can get radio transmission from there, he's saying, it's still dry here, guys, it's still dry. What's it like there? What's it like there? Because that's where the weather's coming from the pit area, from the Grand Prix circuit. It's not beyond the bounds of possibility that if it starts pouring of rain, we could see people pulling into the pits and putting different tyres on and then going for one more lap. It's very, very odd situation that these drivers have been put in. Nobody pushing. They're saving their tyre performance for when they come across the line next time around. Remember, Daniel Kalvitz led them out for WTM powered by Phoenix in the Ferrari. There's real consternation in the pit lane. The mechanics from all the teams are standing by, and of course for the teams who are yet to go, who've already pre-qualified into the second part of this top qualifying shootout session, because they're sniffing the air, they're feeling the wind direction. They don't know what's going to happen for their session, which comes up after this one. I would say, by the way, if the weather's coming down from Spa was more suited to jet skiing and boogie boarding earlier on this afternoon. Even in the top Grand Prix pits, the drains were overflowing like the Trevi fountains. It was unbelievable, the amount of rain that fell at Spa, and that is, what, an hour and a half, 2 hours away, if that, on the back roads, driving spiritedly, perhaps. Just saying.
I've just seen a weather map, John, and it's, let's say it's fully Technicolor, multicolour. You've got the whole lot coming from the west, and high shots over the circuit. It looks though it's almost full night, about 20 kilometres west of the circuit. So tension for those on the tracks, and as you point out, tension for those in the pits. Daniel Kalvitz will go onto his flying lap, does that now down to the first corner.
And it's dark.
Right in the background. He looks back towards Dottinger, but he's looking forwards, and it must see he's got grey on the flank of his cars, and that matches the sky in front of his WTM Ferrari. It's going to be biblical.
I'm hearing from our contact at Spa, from the responsible adult, Eve Hewitt, that the rain was so bad at Spa that it's lifted the track surface considerably down at La Source. There's so much water that's come up through the drainage there. So that's what potentially is on its way. Kalvitz then, Daniel Kalvitz, first through, and therefore sets the magenta time on the timing screens through Sector 1, which is the first part of the Grand Prix circuit. Farfus in behind him for BMW Junior Team. Augusto, you really almost need the headlights on at the moment. Kalvitz with a 40.378, waiting for the Farfus time to come through. The weather is moving in, possibly inexorably. The multi-colours on the radar map are, well, it looks like a huge and very hungry amoeba heading towards the dot on the radar screens down the pit lane that are showing where the circuit is. The centre of the circuit here in the Eifel Mountains often has its own
order in this session will be the finishing order as well. The first car to start a flying lap be the one that gets the most of the dry track and therefore should take the fastest time. If that will be the case, Ferraris will be going first and third at the end of this session. But of course, there's a short way to go. But what is going to happen with the weather? Press on while you can. For those who now started their flying lap, they've got to make it count, and certainly are looking very good for Daniel Kalvik right at the front of the pack.
Dries van Ter fastest in sector 1, but that's all on the Grand Prix circuit. Sven Muller's on the Hansen back in the 44 Porsche GT3R 911 from Falcon. Both the Falcons trying to qualify down to the end of the Hansen back. Don't take the curve on the right, just run right to the edge of the curve though on the exit of that right-left now over the bridge and heading towards the top of the hill as Van Ter is still on the Grand Prix circuit through the S's and coming out onto the Hatzenbach himself. Misses the first apex but cuts back to the second one, gets the power on, runs right up the wall on the right hand side through the exit of the pit lane. Still 16 cars that will be competing later, Bruce Jones, in the pit lane.
Yes, it's worth explaining, John, that people might be going, where's the Grello Porsche, such a fan favourite? That has got to buy along with 15 rivals. They don't take part in this, the first qualifying session, but they'll be there for the final shootout when we have 20 cars, the 16 who've got the buy and the fastest 4 from this grouping of 20. So we're going to have 16 disappointed people at the end of this session, and I think quite a few of them will be able to point to the sky and said it really didn't help my cause. But right now for the drivers on the track, with the likes of Dries van Ter, who should be in the mix in that final qualifying, but he's got to make this lap count. The pressure is really on, and the rain hasn't arrived yet, but oh gosh, you look to the drivers left as they go out toward heading north. It's looking very dark indeed.
Van Ter over the top of the brow and down to Arenberg. Oh, he's gone right to the edge of the track and somehow pulls it back. He was so quick into Arenberg, the right-hander. That's not the preferred line there, but my goodness, Dries van Ter, he knows he's got an opportunity here and he's pushing on very hard indeed through the foxhole and up towards NNR Force. Down one gear, ride the curb on the left-hand side. Stay away from the curbs, the top of the hill. Down another gear and down a third gear. Wait, patience. Now on the throttle, you can ride the curb on the exit of Adnar Force. Down through these little sweeping curves, but they're not corners because you don't have to slow down for them. First of 2 left. The first one you can give up. The second one, a little bit uphill. Use that to slow you down. Over the top of the rise again. Down towards Callenhard. Easy to get on the power too early here and be impatient. Van Ter though looks good, short shift, and then plunging down the hill to those right, and then the hairpin left. Augusto Farfus, second in the line. There's nothing between any of the split times at the moment to say that anybody's got a massive advantage or disadvantage. Farfus is putting good times in though in the BMW, as he is already charging over the far side of the circuit. As I say, he was second in the queue, so that means he's getting the best of the weather at the moment. It might be that I said that they were racing the track and time. They might, Peter, be racing the weather arriving as well here. And Farfus, who's just exited the Caracciolo Carousel, he looks like he's a man on a mission at the moment.
And actually coming up the hill at the Kesselchen, Dries van Ter has actually got a little bit of sunshine cutting through the grey cloud here as well, and you'll be delighted to see that with the Audi man and the young 23-year-old Belgian, former winner here in 2019, Dries van Ter, younger brother of Lawrence, who we'll see later on. He is absolutely flying in that Audi R8, but those purple times, those sectors, there is no one who's stringing them all together, so for now, the track remains pretty even all round. This is so tense.
Dries doing a couple of magenta sectors, but it's changing as the other guys are coming through later on. Bruce Jones, they must know that they are at a disadvantage if the weather hits.
Exactly so. One of the drivers running 14th in this queue of 20 cars, Mauro Engels, just banged in 2 purple sectors. He's improved on the tyres from Dries van Tor. He's the number 6 HRT Mercedes. Down in 18th out of the 20 runners is a driver who potentially has almost the biggest disadvantage being at the back of that queue. But Marco Mappelli in the FFF Racing Team Lamborghini, fastest of all in that first sector, some very good middle sectors. Who else is shining? It's still Dries van Tor, it's still Mauro Engel, and it is, another person who put a quick time, Christopher Haase. Well, he knows the circuit forwards, backwards and sideways. He's in the car collection number 2 Audi, and just keep watching out for that Lamborghini running around in 18th place out of the 20 cars in this line of cars, desperate to get around to complete a flying lap before the rain comes. Or will it? That's the big question.
Well, it is an absolute lottery at the moment, because the drivers can only affect what they can affect. So can the teams. They've done their bit now. The cars are set up. They've made their tyre choice. They're coming through to complete the first of potentially 2 flying laps around the Nürburgring 24 circuit, which is the majority of the Grand Prix track and the whole of the Nürburgring Nordschleife. And the weather continues to close in from the Grand Prix circuit end of things. If it's going to come, it'll come at the top of Adenar Forest and the area around the Vauxhall, I reckon. When it came in the Youngtimer race today, it was right there, Arenberg and the top of the Vauxhall. So here comes Kalvitz to put the first time in. 8:17. We've seen quicker than that. 8:14 for Farfus. Now that is hauling the mail for Augusto Farfus. We thought he was going well in the BMW Junior team, and Farfus then, for the moment, goes to the top of the times, and we are looking, Peter Mackay, for 4 cars to go through into the next part of Super Pole qualifying.
And the thing is, this could be it. It could be one and done here. The chances of getting all the way around another 8 minutes or so for a second flying lap are getting thinner and thinner as we see this cloud coming through across us on our screens right now. Absolutely so tense. What is Dries van Tor going to do? That's a heck of a time from Farfus. But what surprises me is the Falcon Motorsports of Muller, the number 44 car, 4th fastest already. We've only had 5 cars come through, so Falcon not looking to have the same pace that they had in Q1, 2 and 3.
I said, Bruce, that if everything held out, we would see these cars going faster than at any other time of the weekend, and Farfus has done that so far.
He certainly has. The best time until now was 8 minutes 15.225. It's now 8 minutes 14.872, so faster by a third of a second. Who else is going to challenge? Dries van Tor does not go top. He goes into second place. He's down by 0.178 of a second. So it's BMW Junior team, number 77, 15 Audi Sports, Team Phoenix in second place. Third place, Daniel Kalvitz, who set the time very, very early on as the fastest first driver onto the track. And Josh Burden, great lap to take the final position for now. But he's 3.6 seconds down in the KCMG Porsche. But he's edged out Mathieu Vassivière, Conor De Filippi, Klaus Battler, Sven Muller, and then Philip Ellis. In the car that has the steer-by-wire steering, no physical connection. No wonder Darren
Kalvitz is
Turner,
pitted.
also driving that with Philip Ellis, said it's time to put on the big boy pants.
Kalvitz is pitted in the WTM, powered by Phoenix Ferrari. As to the top, Mauro Engel, despite being, I thought, slightly held up at 8:13.644. And also into the pits, Sven Muller for Falcon Motorsports. So maybe that was Engel getting a tow, but Mauro Engel then for AMG and Team HRT. So it's Mercedes-AMG Team HRT, BMW Junior Team, Audi Sport Team Phoenix, Audi Sport Car Collection at the moment with Chris Haase on the bubble. Is there anybody who can challenge him on their first flying laps? Mauro Mappelli, the Triple F Racing Team Lamborghini, that's been a quick car. He's still to come to the line. Let's see what that time is, we know from Jim Glickenhaus talking to us on Midweek Motorsport on Wednesday, they didn't think they were going to push too hard because they didn't want to bang up the car. Mapelli bumps Hesse out of the top 4 positions, Bruce.
Yeah, Mercedes, BMW, Audi, Lamborghini, the top 4. And that was a difficult lap for Mapelli, starting 18th out of the 20 runners. So they hold the positions for now, but that was a huge pressure lap for everyone. And just checking that we've still got everybody's set a time. Charles Espinal was slowest in that session. Looking to see where the Glickenhaus is. Looking at the charts, SPX into 17th place, 10 seconds down the pace, but a good lap there by Fernandez Laza in 7:04. The car that looks so different from the rest. And you know what? Those dark skies are now only medium dark skies.
Oh no,
lightning. First top qualifying.
Lightning in the skies for that first lap for these cars. Now, I'm just looking to see if anyone has come. No, everybody's come back in. So it is only one lap for that part of the session, just after 7 o'clock then. And the top 4, Mauro Engel for Mercedes-AMG team HRT, the number 6 car, will go through, as will BMW Junior team, and Augusto Farfus in the 77, and Vanto in the Audi Sport Team Phoenix, and Mapelli at the end there in the Hankook Triple F Racing team. Well, I think some people have gone round again. Has Farfus?
Vantor, Augusto Farfus there near the front end of the queue. Mapelli likewise, and Vantor is winding it up even more on that first flyer.
It looks like Cronjes and Burden might have gone back out as well, or at least continued on. At more than half of that 20-car field pitted after their first lap, and Peter, you said you might have thought it was one and done. The weather's held out. We've got lightning in the vicinity, but we continue at the moment. This has not been called this session. And Christopher Hase, who was bumped out by Mapelli, is trying to find, well, he was bumped out by 0.166 of a second. And I'll guarantee you Christopher Hase knows exactly where he can find at least that around the Nordschleife.
Well, we've got lightning in the air, and the Audi team will be hoping that there's lightning inside this car, and you can be sure there is with Christopher Hase piloting this Audi R8 LMS. And yeah, he's got to find just a couple of tenths in 25.3 kilometres, and this is a critical lap. Hase has a massive moment there coming down towards Kellenhard, not the place where you want to get out of shape, but
and there's rain.
It's now or never for Hase.
And there's rain for Hase as he dives down the hill towards the second point of entry onto the Nordschleife for the tourist fahren at the bridge at the bottom of the hill, one of the lowest parts of the circuit. Brake as the road comes in from the right hand side, roll all the way out, and just a few spots of rain on the windscreen of the Audi Sport Team Car Collection number 2 R8 LMS. But they've gone now, and he is flying, but so is Dries van Toor. Remember, Engel with the best time at the moment of an 8:13.664, fastest time of the week that we have seen so far. He's in the pits. He thinks he's done enough. Between him and his team, they were 1.2 seconds ahead of Augusto Farfus, who's still out there. But Laurens Vantoor at the moment is absolutely flying, Bruce Jones, and setting magenta sector after magenta sector.
6 sectors done. He's fastest in sectors 3, 4, 5 and 6. I sense he's even catching Augusto Farfus. Won't catch him before the end of the lap, but he's taking great chunks of time out of him. Half a second here in one sector, 2/3 in another. And Christopher Hase, we rode with him a short while ago, nowhere near the pace. The Belgian is being absolutely inspired. And you know what? The car's going to have to do it all over again, because the fastest 4 go through to the top 20 shootout with the 16 who've already qualified. But you'd say that Vantoor's driving this like a one-lap shot. He put in his banker lap, it was good. He's chanced the weather, he's pressing on. He's not going to catch Farfus, doesn't matter, won't be interrupted, but he's about to go through another sector, the longest sector, sector 7 out of the 9, and I want to see what the difference is between him and Farfus in terms of time, but he's definitely closing in as they get to the end of the lap. Topple Engel, of course, in the pits.
But Haase doesn't have to beat Vantoor, he has to beat Mapelli to get in the top 4, and Mapelli's stopped. The Hankook Triple F Racing Team Lamborghini will not go any quicker than an 8:15.6. That's what they've slapped on the table. That's their bid, and they're sticking with it. They've stuck on 17, if you want, whereas I'll take a card, says Chris Haase, and he's pushing on, trying to find a 10.5 or so more than he had last time. Farfus comes through and improves. No, does not improve. A good 4 seconds down. Vantoor to come through next. His best an 8:15.0. And he's not yet gone through, but it's another magenta time, a 2:25.9 in that long sector. Vaxivier goes through. Further down the timings. And he doesn't trouble the top 4. He was down in 10th position for AMG Team Get Speed. So here's Vantoor coming to the end of the lap. Sector 8 for once does not have that telltale magenta colour to it. 8:15 he had. He's going to, no, he's not going to better it. Yes, he is. Yes, he is. At 8:12.319. The running clock there was for Conor de Filippi, not for Dries Vantoor, at 8:12.319. That is quality stuff from Vantoor. He's got to do that again. Got to do that again. It hasn't meant anything other than his starting position in the next part of the shootout. But Christopher Haase is still racing to get into the top 4. Still waiting to see the final lap times as well from Cronjes for Valkenhurst, for Josh Burton still to come around as well.
He's gone.
Earlier today we saw that Dries Vantoor very happy to run with the car loose and you reckon fairly softly set up.
Yeah.
But he was going right to the edge of the circuit and clearly with an advantage now of 1.3 seconds, he's nailed this one. That was impressive under huge pressure.
No improvement for Haase. He's pulled off 8:26. So Haase is out. Audi Sport Team Car Collection out. And will not progress. Is there anybody else out there? As the wind begins to pick up and the rain has arrived at the first corner, and there's a spin at the end of this session as the rain is engulfing the Grand Prix circuit, and around has gone the number 16 Mercedes-AMG. That's Charles Esplanade. He's not hit anything, but it is now. Charles has picked the car up, he's pointing it in the right direction as he heads down towards the Dunlop hairpin at the bottom, and there's a man there building a large wooden thing and putting animals in it 2x2. That's how bad the rain is at the moment. Down at the bottom of the circuit, it came from exactly the direction that we expected it to. And now we know why those early runners, Bruce Jones, were rushing. Literally, another 5 or 6 minutes, they would not have got their second laps in.
And it wasn't just gentle rain.
No.
It was racing the arrival of rain. It looked as though we'd got away with it. But boy, in the space of 30 seconds, the track has become fully wet on the Grand Prix loop. Christopher Haase going back to the pits. He's ended up just out of the mix. 5th place, how galling for him. But for Dries Vantoor, Mauro Engel, Augusto Farfus and Marco Mapelli, that's Audi, Mercedes, BMW and Lamborghini through. Their evening isn't done. They've got qualifying to go on a fully wet track. In fact, some of the drivers coming back to the pits aren't managing to stay on the black stuff anymore. Number 8, Mathieu Vassivière, his Get Speed Mercedes, off into the gravel and through. The spin for Charles Esplanade. But boy, did that rain come when it finally arrived.
An extraordinary session. All these drivers, of course, albeit on warm tyres, but they are very much slick racing tyres. We have to go back to 2019, I think, to see times better than what we've seen here. 19, I think, Peter, was it an 8:10 that year?
8 minute 10 by the number 2 Mercedes. 2020 was a wet qualifying session, so yeah, 2019 was the last time. So for Dries Van Tour, I mean, that young man continues to blow us away. 8 minute 12 in those sorts of conditions, knowing that rain was literally around any corner at any moment. Wow, what a session. And now, of course, well, we'll see, as long, hopefully the thunder and lightning stays away, so that the drivers can go out and do the pole position shootout, albeit in the wet. But can you imagine, even you saw the drivers there, best drivers in the world, limping the cars back at walking pace, and it doesn't matter who you are on slicks. I mean, look, with Christopher Hasse right now in this on slicks with standing water, it's a nightmare. It's an absolute nightmare for these guys.
So we will now wait to see what the organisers decide, because even on wet tyres at the moment, I think it will be difficult. This shootout format, introduced in 2012, it was then the fastest 40 cars that took part in it. We are seeing rain, the like of which we've seen before here, in fairness. I remember one year where it was cascading over the top of the Armco out on the Nordschleife, and it is running down the circuit at the moment on the Grand Prix track. I think somewhere I have in my mind, and Peter, you'll have the stats because I know this is part of what you've done, and in my mind, I now can't find the piece of paper I wrote this down on. Have we had an 8:08 or an 8:06 by a McLaren in top 40 shootout before? Or did I dream that somewhere?
Yes. You got me.
And me too.
And I haven't got a quick way of finding that out.
No,
so we'll
I can't find them.
Of course, and let the collective, they're out there, we know who they are,
look
fill in
back
with
about
that
3 or
fact.
4
But
years.
the rate at which that rain arrived, and the sheer amount, we're not going to see any quick times this evening, but it's a question of how quickly they can go on what clearly going to have to be wet weather tyres. But you know what? Even though it's raining heavily, as Christopher Hasse was coming back to the pits, you could see the sky was
lightening up again. Yeah,
up again. So this may pass through, but that water's not, as much as it's pouring off the curbs and into the drains, it's still running across the track in a lot of places. It's heavy, heavy rain. But look to the west. Unfortunately, though, brightish to the east, and it's still powering in from the west. Not as dark as before, but torrential rain now.
It depends now how quickly this passes, because right now the Grand Prix circuit is not drivable. Never mind the Nordschleife, the Grand Prix circuit is not drivable. Pictures from Spa earlier on today with whole areas of the circuit engulfed, drains being backed up and spewing very unpleasant looking water out into the areas. The track at La Source lifted, and hearing just recently that the whole of the event at Spa, which was planned for this weekend, is being cancelled because the track is too badly damaged by the water damage that has occurred. Now, that's the area that the weather is coming from, down at the Eifel Mountains here. Spa and Nürburgring, not near neighbours, but near enough to say that weather has potted down in the last 2.5, 3 hours, maybe a wee bit more. Just coming up to 7:15 here at the Nürburgring, and the noise you hear is rainfall on effects microphones on cars parked in the pit lane, and I think very shortly we're going to see the teams decide to move some of those cars under cover. It is absolutely pouring at the moment, and the Octane 126 Ferrari sitting on its dollies, I think, is going to be given a little bit of respite from the torrential rain that's falling in pit lane. It's one of the only cars that's still out there on the Nordschleife itself, from the Audi Sport bridge on the Dottinger Höhe, heading back down towards looking away from the Gallows Hill corner. There is standing water all the way across the track. Dries Vanthoor with a stunning lap has put in the fastest lap of the week, gentlemen. 8:12.319. No surprises, Bruce Jones, top qualifying. The pole shootout has been delayed, but let's reflect for a moment on the dry weather we had just moments ago and that second lap on his tyres by Dries Vanthoor.
He started in 8th place, which wasn't an advantage, except if you were starting 10 places further back, like Marco Bappelli. But what he did, very promising first flying lap, and then stayed on. And some of his rivals who decided the rain was going to hit before they could complete a second flying lap will have been kicking themselves, including Maro Engel, who had been fastest and had to see his time toppled. But it was a phenomenal couple of laps. The pressure was right on the shoulders. And for the drivers who went on to that second flying lap, they must have thought, have I gambled too far? Dries Vanthoor got back to the finish line just before the rain came, and the rate at which it fell, it certainly caught out those who were running further back in the queue, including Marco Bappelli. But the Italian did scrape into that vital 4th position. Therefore, he can go through to the final top 20 shootout, but it will be delayed. The session has an end time, Central European time, of 10 to 9 tonight, so there's a bit of scope. But right now, it's absolutely the right decision to be made. The water, wherever you look at the circuit, is just flowing with abandon.
I'm indebted to Josh Barrett. He found the McLaren lap. That was pole in 2014 of an 8:10.921. But I knew there was something sub 8:10, and he's found the Laurens Vanthoor 2018 pole at an 8:09.105. Thank you for that, Josh. I've sort of tried to move in technology-wise into not printing as much out and having more on screens. The problem is, if I by accident close a screen, then trying to get it back is very difficult. I think I'm going to have to go back to just spending money on ink and paper.
It is expensive. Johnny Palmer laughs at me the whole time. Analog Jones, he's got it all at his fingertips. But there is something rather sort of feel a little more secure. Yes, you might have to shuffle some paper, but you know it's on your desk somewhere.
So a delay at the moment, it's not been defined. Undefined delay. We're not under time pressure in terms of anything coming along behind this. So Augusto Farfus will have to do it again. Pit exit green in about just under half an hour. So they're going to wait to see what's happening. They're looking at the race radar, race control. They're pretty good here. I remember last year being at the circuit, my 14th consecutive Nürburgring 24 trackside last year, and weather getting worse during the night, and race control absolutely nailed the restart times. They're very good. Extraordinarily, looking at Flansgarden at blue skies in the distance, but that's not where the weather's going from. That's where the weather's gone to. I suspect if we can't get this run this evening, that there's two options, that they'll fit it in tomorrow morning around warm-up, although I know that there's other things, including WTCR, or the cars will line up on the grid as they're qualified with positions 17, 18, 19 and 20 being the top four from the sessions that we've just done. It's not what we want to see. We have a completely different challenge for Farfus, for Laurens Vanthoor, for Maro Engel, and just sneaking in by 0.166 of a second. The number 63 Triple F Hankook Racing Team Lamborghini, and Marco Mappelli
will be out of the car now because, as Peter's just pointed out, those top 4 finishers
correct
get through. They have to change their drivers. But you look through your pack at FFF Racing Team. Mappelli's out, but you've got Frank Pereira, very quick. Giacomo Alte, young, very quick. But you've got Mirko Bortolotti. Who do you put in the car? So they're thinking about that. But another element, the teams that were out in that first part of the shootout, what setup did they have their cars on? If they thought the rain was going to arrive, let's say, 5 minutes earlier than it was, have they set them up soft?
Yeah.
Did Dries Van Tor and the Phoenix team gamble on that? And how quickly can they change the cars? Of course, the 16 teams that already had a buy, they've been able to watch the weather and adapt their cars. But if you've got a car set up as though it's going to all be staying dry, you're going to be quite busy between now and 7:45, are you not?
And Peter, run us through the 16 that will be joined by Audi Sport Team Phoenix, Mercedes-AMG HRT, BMW Junior Team and Hankook Triple F. Who are the 16 that were already qualified? So we'll still have another 20 to run. So again, it's been the top, it will be the top 36 actually that will have run. We've got just under 24 minutes to go. Give me the qualifiers who are through to the pole shootout already.
So already in order of how they qualify, which is to do with the NLS rounds coming up to the 24 hours of the Nürburgring and the qualifying race, and that's done by optimum sector by sector. So the fastest of those at the moment is the number 11 Phoenix Racing Audi, the number 7 Mercedes Team Getspeed, the number 31 Fricadelli Porsche, the number 911 Manthey Porsche, the number 3 Retronic Porsche, the number 4 Mercedes Team HRT, the number 30 Fricadelli Porsche, the number 5 Phoenix Audi, the number 26 Octane Ferrari, the number 1 Rover Racing BMW, the number 20 Schubert Motorsport BMW, the number 29 Audi Sport Team Land Audi R8, the number 9 Getspeed Mercedes, the Conrad Motorsport Lamborghini, Huber Motorsport number 23 Porsche, and the number 100 Walkenhorst Motorsport BMW are your 16 who are already through. Now, a point on the 4 cars that have just qualified from that opening session there into this pole position shootout. They are in Parc Fermé. They can only change tyres. That's it.
I have a feeling, and I would have to troll back through this, I think Parc Fermé started when the green flag was shown for that session, for that first session. So even the cars who weren't out, the top 16, actually couldn't make any changes to their car where that first Q session was going on. I'll stand to be corrected by that, but things pop up in my mind when we're talking about various bits and pieces. At RSL_studio and use the hashtag RSLN24. The rain has arrived, and it's arrived with a vengeance.
Who's your money on in the wet now, guys?
Depends who goes out. It really does.
I believe Estra's in the 911 Manthey. He put that up on social media, so it must be official.
Really? Interesting. That's not a bad choice. He's good. But in that car, if it was my choice, who would have... No, all right. Yeah, no. I'll put Kevin in that, even in the wet. Austrian. Do we know any
Let's talk Mercedes.
He's French. He's French. He lives in Austria.
He lives in Austria, but he is French, yes. Former French Carrera Cup champion as well. That's where he came to the attention of Porsche. Who do you think for Mercedes, Bruce?
Well, every time I see his name on an entry list, I expect him to ring the ultimate from a car, the utmost from a car. Raffaele Marciello, Team Getspeed, number 7 Mercedes. That crew haven't really hit their straps, but if anyone can do it, he can do it. But it just doesn't look like a Mercedes meeting. I know we've got Maro Engels second at the moment, but that was with 16 of their rivals not having taken part. And Marcello and Engel, I put them on a par. If anything, I'd say Engel's maybe the slightly better racer, but they are super quick and they'll get whatever they can with a three-pointed star.
That's a good point. Let's talk about the four who've already gone. So, Audi have already used Dries Van Toor in that number 15 car. Their choice of Robin Frange, Matteo Drudi, Frank Stippler. Who are you putting in that one, gents? You can't have Van Toor again.
Drudi.
Stippler.
His hair's too tidy. Drudi.
His Stippler's hair is just the mark of... He doesn't need any Alpecin shampoo, that's for sure.
He has got a full head of hair. All right. Mar Engel has been used in the number 6. Bruce, we've heard... Who would you put in that? So that's Assenheimer, Nico Bastian or Hubert Haupt?
Assenheimer knows the circuit supremely well. He's hardly missed a race here for about a decade. Nico Bastian is very quick. Hubert Haupt, a little older. I think he'd let it be between the other two. I'd go for Bastian out of that grouping.
Peter?
Oh, that's a pretty strong shout.
Maybe you've got to put the guy who owns the car out in that condition. If you don't want him looking at Hubert Haupt, of course, very successful property developer who's in, and that's a pro car. But Hubert he's got a very successful business, but he's had some incredible motor racing history. He actually raced in Indy Lights against Greg Moore, believe it or not, and James Weaver as well. So he's got a lot of experience. However, I would probably have to put Assenheimer if Engel's out of the picture.
All right, 77, Peter, with the rain still falling at the Nürburgring Nordschleife and on the Grand Prix circuit. 77, Farfus isn't there. So you've got Dan Harper, you've got Max Hesse, and you've got Neil Verhagen.
Well, I think anybody from Northern Ireland will have the same feeling as we have here in Scotland, used to a lot of rain. So you got to put Dan Harper, the Northern Irishman, the 20-year-old, of course, won the SP8T class last year in an M4, and also Carrera Cup GB champion too. So yeah, I'd put Speedy Dan Harper in there.
And you agree with that, Bruce?
I think it's a very close call, but I think you're quite right. Dan's done a lot of his racing in the rain, but I think there can be really no debate in terms of Bortolotti going into 63. He's done things in Lamborghinis over the past, it seems almost like a decade. I know he had a little period with Audi, but he's got to be the man.
Frank Pereira, Bortolotti. I think it has to be Bortolotti, doesn't it, as well?
First
Peter?
world problems. That is a first world problem if I've ever heard
it is
one.
You know what, though? The fortune doesn't appear to be riding with Frank Pereira this year. He's been involved in several incidents, not all his fault, but, I would, even that withstanding, I would still, having watched Bortolotti considerably over the last 2 years, he's got to be the guy for that car. Oh, unless he's got anything else in his diary for the evening.
I think that Mirko Bortolotti will also he will have his chest puffed right out with confidence, because that lap last night, I mean,
it's a good
wow.
point.
The only question mark over that car is, though, is that I was reading earlier on that Hankook haven't had enough time full stop out on track leading up to this race, but particularly they've had no time on their wet tyre. That could hold that Lamborghini back.
Rear wing change going on in the garage for one of the Fricadelli cars. It was the 31 car that was getting a quite significant crank up on the top plane of the rear wing. I wonder if Parc Fermé rules have been waived, given the very extreme changes in weather, because
I think we did see the sort of force majeure element there.
Yes.
No ships going up and down the pit lane. It has eased the rain. That's a good thing, John. But the amount of standing water is going to be pretty epic.
Green light at pit lane is 1945 to get out and around to form up again with the final 20 cars for top 20 shootout. The first car, we're being told by race control, will be flagged off at 5 minutes before 8 local time, that is. So that's 5 minutes before 8 local time, 5 minutes before 7 if you're in the UK. Do the arithmetic yourself if you're elsewhere. Stay tuned, because we're going to see a very different challenge here, and we're going to see a very different type of bravery. We know how quick this track can dry out. We've got 15 minutes before we even get out onto the track or and round the Grand Prix circuit. Then you've got a voyage of discovery, pun absolutely intended there, for the first run around the Nürburgring Nordschleife. And then you've got a maximum of 2 laps. You'd say at the moment, right now, if you were going out, Bruce, you'd be going out on the wettest of wet tyres, monsoony type, please move as much water as you can, a bathtub every 0.2 of a second tyres. But in 15 minutes, and another 10 minutes after that before you're green flagged off, and then another 10 minutes after that before you start your first flying lap, things can change quickly, even with just a few cars running on the Nordschleife.
I think I've worked out with those elements, these massive factors, what you've got to do. The driver you choose to go out is the driver who's worst at the crosswords or the Sudoku or general thinking, because it's going to be really, really... The committed come away without reward, put it that way.
We've seen that before in wet Superpole here. It has been a challenge already for the 20 cars that we've now reduced to 4 that will go forward into the second part of top qualifying. Top Q2, TQ2, with the green light at the end of the pit lane, still around about 13 minutes away. Teams discussing tactics, I'm sure. Drivers wondering what is going to be out there, and they're not going to know until after all of the essential choices have been made. Extraordinary. Extraordinary to see. 15 Audi getting rolled back so that it's not getting water inside. That's the Stippler, Vanto, Drudy and Robin Freinsch Team Phoenix Audi sport car. The Haupt Racing team hasn't got a Tiger in its tank, but a Tiger on its bonnet. Really nice wrap on the front of that car. I love the way at these times, Bruce, the mechanics are trying to kind of look cool. Yes, we're all in control. Work on the car. Give it a polish. Give the car a polish. And any time they could be called into action.
They could, but it is the calm. Well, I was going to say the calm before the storm. It's the lack of calm after the storm. But yeah, pacing around, everyone's on the balls of their feet, because it's not as though the challenge of qualifying here isn't tricky enough in normal weather conditions. It's the person in charge in each team of watching the weather map. They've got a sort of increased importance when you come to the Nordschleife. They've just got to get it right, not for a long time, but just the time at which the cars are out on the track. Yeah. And any cameras they can see around the circuit that will give them half a clue as to how much water is sitting where it maybe oughtn't will be massively helpful. But in the start-finish straight and in the pit straight, the track is greasy, it's slick. Well, it's properly wet, but there is no rain falling at the moment. So... But big question is, of course, it's not going to dry out a great deal with any heat from the sun because it's in the evening. And there doesn't appear to be a great deal of wind to help either. So it is going to be staying wet and very, very tricky. And indeed, any chance of looking at a longer shot, you still can't see really much of the outline of the trees as one looks at the point at which the circuit goes off towards the Nordschleife.
It has lightened up the sky.
See what's happening, but more rain on the camera lens. So as soon as I say it's not raining on the pit straight, unless that lens hasn't been given a wipe, one looking back, looking into the rain, if you will, looking west, back across the pit building and the paddock. No, rain is still falling, at least the height of that gantry. So, oh my word.
It is looking a bit brighter though, Bruce. I will say that. The reason... I mean, it obviously is going to be wet tyres. So why are we having the debate? Why are people huddled together? Because, Peter, as we've heard from all of the drivers we've spoken to this week, and even before we got started on Thursday, it's not as simple as saying wet or slick here. There are different compounds and constructions of wet tyres from each of the major tyre manufacturers. And that's what they're trying to work out at the moment. Which one are we going to take that will give us a lap around the Nordschleife as a sighter, then a really good lap, and then at the end of that, is it going to give us one more if we need it?
Well, that's the thing, and we've seen, of course, we've seen a number of the teams studying laptops and a lot of pointing and clipboard tapping going on as well. Interestingly, having a look in the Fricadelli garage, the Dennis Olsen and one of the engineers looking at the laptop, which looked to have some quite sensitive information about tyres, which the cameraman very bravely went up close to and I think nearly had his fingers taken off by the Fricadelli mechanic. There obviously some sensitive information there, and setting the pressures correctly, getting the right compound is massively important. And this is where the technicians from Michelin, Hankook, Falcon are really going to earn their money. It seems that actually it's not the amount of water on the track that's the problem. It's the threat of thunder and lightning, I think, that's holding us back at the moment.
Yeah, quite often regulations about electrical storms in the area. For example, in America, certainly when we work with IMSA, which is next weekend at Detroit. Got another very busy weekend. ELMS and here at the Nürburgring 24 this weekend. Next weekend, it's WEC, 8 hours at Portimao. IMSA at Detroit, all covered in sound and vision for you at the Radio Show Limited area of the internet, radio-show.co.uk. Here are the drivers. It is going to be in Q2 for the number 3 Porsche, Julian Andler. Write this down, somebody. The number 18, Marco Holzer. 23 Porsches, Nico Menzel. Dennis Olsen in the 30, Matt Campbell in the 31, Thomas Preining in the 33, all of these Porsches, and brilliant, Martin Ragginger. There's my pick straight away. He is awesome in the wet. Kevin Estra, as we knew, in the 911. And did I see a tweet from Audi Sport as well? I did. Frank Stippler in the 15. Stippy. Kelvin von der Linde for the number 29, Land Audi. It will be Nicky Thiem in the 11. And in the number 5, Dennis Marshall, Phoenix Racing driver. So there's some of the drivers. Hope you've jotted those down, co-commentators. That's who we'll see. 4 cars have already gone through. If you're just joining us, by the way, we are under a weather hold at the Nürburgring Nordschleife. I do feel that in the 15 odd years that we've done this, we should almost have that as pre-recorded. The rain has started falling again around the pit area and is still at various parts of the circuit as well, but on the Grand Prix track it is definitely falling. We're even beginning now, because it is so dark, to see the effect of the lights around the Grand Prix track. We've got the sweepers out. Fans of German utility vehicles will be delighted to see a late model Unimog with the rotary brush doing its job up towards the Schumacher S. We've got just under 6 minutes before the cars come round onto the start-finish line, and then another about 10 minutes after that before we're anticipating the first cars to be flagged off. Now, Peter, for those who are just joining us, and my timing screen changes, of course, just as I was about to give you the 4 who's joined in. Do we go in reverse order or do we go in fastest first order?
Oh, now you're testing me there.
I think the fastest goes last, don't they?
It certainly didn't for
No, they didn't. That's
Q1.
right. Yeah.
You've stumped me there, John. I'll be honest.
So the four we think who've qualified through will go on to the end. We're going to find out in just a minute because the hard-working marshals are carrying out the little A-frames with the car numbers onto the start-finish line. So let's see who they put at the front. If it's the fastest qualifier, that was who, Peter?
Number 11, Phoenix Racing Audi.
Right. Let's see
which will be Nicky Team going out there as well. Mad Nicky.
Oh, hang on a minute. No. Annoyingly, they're not the car numbers. They're just the numbers where they're going to line them up.
Yeah, no, I was looking at that, John.
Well, this is a good sign, though. If they wouldn't, the organisers, if they were worried about a threat of thunder and lightning, they would not send.
Oh, I think we're going. I think we're going on time.
Yeah. This is a bet. You would not risk people going outside in open air. So could be. Yeah, they could be ready to go.
We have had a variety of ways of doing this in the past. We've had the Wheel of Fortune, rock, paper, scissors, best of three at the back of the garages. I'm only joking, obviously, but we have had random draw in the past, and I've yet to see a start list, so we'll keep an eye on that. Sometimes Grouchy has tweeted in at RSL_studio. RSL_studio. Is it time for an impromptu bit of midweek maritime sport? Might not be far off. Haupt AMG comes out under the lights in the pit lane, yet to put a set of tyres on. And Peter Mackay has the order for the pole shootout, or as it is properly called, top qualifying 2, TQ2. Peter, what have you got?
Yes, so this was drawn in the press room about an hour before top qualifying 1 began. So it will be the number 4 Mercedes of Christodoulou, Engel, and Metzger leading away. In fact, I got it round the wrong way. I do apologise. First will be the number 77 of Harper, Hesse, and Verhagen. Rolling off second will be the number 11 Audi of Beretta, Stippler, and Schramm.
So that's going to be Stippy.
Stippy, yeah. Rolling off third will be the number 26 car, Grossman, Trimmer, and Hershey. That's the Octane Ferrari. Rolling off fourth will be the number 6 Mercedes, which will either be Assenheimer or Nico Bastian. Rolling off fifth will be the number 20 car, Krohn, Klingman, and Sims. That's a BMW. Rolling off sixth will be the number 30 of Matt Campbell. Number 31 of Dennis Olsen. Rolling off seventh. Rolling off eighth will be the number 15 Audi. Number 9 will be the number 23 car of Neufer, Aust, and Menzel. The Manthey Porsche with Kevin Estra on board will start from 10th. 11th will be the number 5 Audi of Kolb, Sloten, and Hofer. 12th will be Maxi Goetz, Juncadella, and Raffaele Marciello in the 7 Mercedes. Rolling off 13th will be the number 29 Audi. Rolling off 14th will be the number 1 row BMW. Rolling off 15th will be the number 19 Lamborghini of Axel Jeffries, Darmartino, and Zimmerman. Rolling off 16th will be the number 100 of Henry Walkenhorst, Van Bolen, and Breuer. Rolling off 17th will be the number 3 Retronic Porsche, followed by the 63 Lamborghini, the number 9 Mercedes, and the number 4 Mercedes with Christodoulou, Engel, and Metzger.
Metzger will be driving that car. Maury Krantz will be out in the Get Speed car in 19th position for the number 9. Top qualifying position 4, as we talked about. Let me see some of the others that we haven't mentioned. We've mentioned Julian Andler. It's going to be Henry Volkenhorst for the number 100 BMW. It will be Axel Jeffries, no surprise there, for the Conrad Lamborghini. Nick Yellerly will take on the defending champion Rover BMW, the number 1 car in 14th. It'll be Kelvin von der Linde who takes out the 29 Audi. I think we mentioned that. It's going to be Raffaele Marciello off in 12th in the 7 Get Speed Mercedes. Dennis Marshall we mentioned, Kevin Estre we mentioned, Nico Menzel we mentioned in the Huber Porsche, I think. Dennis Olsen for Frickadelli, yes, Matt Campbell. Jesse Krohn will take out the number 20 Schubert BMW. Luca Ludwig will take out the Ferrari 126, Octane 126. And those are the drivers that I have. Right, gentlemen, we are moments away from the cars rolling out onto the grid. If you're in this now, are you our happiest to be Manuel Metzger, who's going out 20th in the HRT Mercedes, or are you happiest to have gone out first? Bruce Jones, what do you reckon? First, will the first become last and the last become first here in this biblical situation?
I was heading that very direction. You know, John, I haven't a clue, but everyone will have a theory. But I tell you what, it's a moving landscape. Well, it was a moving landscape at Spa as it washed down the hillside, but certainly just so super tricky. And only time will tell. But looking at any weather charts, it's saying around this time it's going to be 17 degrees with thunderstorms. An hour later, it's going to be 16 degrees with thunderstorms. The only real difference is the wind is moving from the southeast rather than the south-southeast. So it's changing all the time. But for these drivers, well, this is what they're out there to do. And they've got a very, very clear task. Will they go for one flying lap or two? Will the weather get better or worse? Let's see. But I think we're going to have thrills, that's for sure. We may also have some spills as well, John.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think you might be right. Remember, in our midweek motorsport preview on Wednesday, Adam Christodoulou, whose team qualified directly into TQ2, top qualifying 2. Remember how important he said it was to be at the front of the field and to have one of those blue flashing lights in the windscreen. Well, not only did the four who qualied up from TQ1 get a chance to go for pole, but they also get the last four of those lights. And that is such a really important part of being able to catch people's eyes in the traffic, catch the marshal's eyes, catch the guys around you. They know that that is a top 20 qualified car. Christodoulou's team already had one. The four who've qualified up now get one. Now what we find out is who starts where in the first 10 rows of the grid when we roll off towards the green light at 3:30 local time on Saturday. Remember, the formation lap on Saturday will start at 10 minutes past the hour before the green flag at 3:30, and 10 minutes before that we'll get another chance to see the Sabine Schmidt tribute from BMW, and Jim Glickenhaus telling us that the first public appearance of the Glickenhaus LMH running around the track as well, not at any kind of speed I wouldn't have thought. The test mule that has done all the hard work is going to be going back and be rebuilt before its competition debut at Monza, before Le Mans in August. And their competition debut next weekend, not this weekend, but next weekend in the 8 Hours of Portimao. You can hear that exclusively live and free on the Radio Show Limited network of channels. That's next Saturday and Sunday. Impressive entry list for that. And also I noticed that the entry list for Monza WEC has also been bolstered by people who want to do some testing. That's the last WEC race before Le Mans. So pit lane is open. Cars now make their way around the Grand Prix circuit. First opportunity here, Bruce, for the drivers to see just how wet it is. Is it a slight surprise that we're, Peter, not seeing Nick Tandy in the number 30, an acknowledged Porsche wet weather specialist?
I think that is quite a surprise, actually. I mean, we talked about it yesterday on the commentary, his incredible performance at Petit Le Mans in 2015 in the pouring rain and actually beating all the prototypes in his GT 911 RSR. But the one thing is that Matt Campbell, he seems to get quicker every single race, and he is really in the winning habit. So
you know, it's and Matt's had a little bit more mileage on the Nürburgring in the last couple of years, so maybe that's in the team's thinking. So we're going to see, we're going to find out, that's for sure. But normally, wet conditions do favour the Porsche with its rear engine layout.
Duncan Vincent has.
I think what happens
Go ahead,
Nick
Bruce.
Tandy, he's brilliant in the wet, but he likes to have the added disadvantage of maybe a mechanical problem like he had in the closing laps of the Spa 24 Hours. He loves the challenge, and frankly, just a wet Nordschleife doesn't really do it for him. But joking aside, Matt Campbell's been getting some really, really good miles on the ring. But let's hope they've made the right choices, not just in the car setup, the driver choice, but looking down on the start-finish straight, the track looks just greasy and wet.
It's a lot of water
looking at the
still.
cars going around the grid, full spray in the drivers' faces as they chased around. So even the difference between the section of the Grand Prix circuit that runs behind the paddock and that on the higher point on the start-finish straight. Rain is still falling, but nothing like the rain that came down, 45 minutes ago, right at the end of that first qualifying shootout session. 5 minutes to go, so the 77 BMW Junior Team M6 GT3 sitting at the front of the queue. Doors still open on a lot of the cars. Don't want the screen to steam up. Always a problem. But the sharp end of the field is going to be, well, we do not know what the order is going to be. And you know what? I love this massive jeopardy that can face these drivers. Consequence is huge.
Bruce Jones, Peter Mackay, I'm John Hindhoff. Hello to William D. Chris D's just tweeted us. He's ready in front of the big screen. Very optimistic. He's got the top down on the 911 Cabriolet model that he's holding at the moment. Duncan Vincent has gone the other way. Got the old butter Cornish crunchy biscuits. Duncan, you're getting paid too much if you can afford to shop at M&S, mate. I tell you what, we need your gigs.
It was definitely a present or a giveaway.
That looks like some kind of bundle, doesn't it, that he's got there? He's got the blackberry gin bramble, raspberry mojito, pina colada, all M&S. This is not just watching motor racing. This is M&S watching motor racing from Duncan Vincent. Hello, mate. Nice to know that you tuned in. At RSL_studio, slightly delayed, but we're ready to go for TQ2, top qualifying 2. The blue rule is out. Where would you be in a garage racing anything without the blue rule? And happy birthday, by the way, to Duncan Vincent. I wonder if all that M&S must have been a present, because he wouldn't have spent that money on himself, would he? Let's be honest.
Not a chance, unless it was Red Bull. No, honestly, you should see his Red Bull fridge in the circuit office at Knockhill. It's like he's a backed athlete or something.
So if you're just joining us, waiting to find out who's going to be on pole position for the 49th running of the total ADAC Nürburgring 24 Hours, and wondering why we're not talking about some fantastic lap. We've had just over half an hour's delay from top qualifying 1, TQ1, where we saw 4 cars qualify up into the final 20 shootout for pole position. Top 20 get the blue flashing lights in the windscreen. And now with a completely different set of weather conditions. It was overcast, it was dark, but it was dry for the first part of TQ. Now we've had the big thunderstorm. The rain has washed across the whole of the Grand Prix circuit, and the majority, at least, of, if not all, of the Nürburgring Nordschleife. Drivers now will be getting set off at intervals for a sighting lap of the Nürburgring Nordschleife, and then a maximum of 2 flying laps, and that will determine who takes pole position. The outright pole record, 809, that is not in jeopardy. Lawrence Van Toe can breathe easy for another year for the mark that he set in 2018, I think we said it was, didn't we? Because we're not going to challenge that today. This is going to be a challenge of a very different nature. It's going to be finding the grip. And in some respects, Bruce, even after you've done the warm-up lap, the formation lap, that's going to give you a vague idea, with the rain now falling even heavier on the start-finish line. But it's only that, a vague idea. This is like old-fashioned motor racing. It's more like rallying than motor racing. Every corner you come to, you're not going to know how much grip you've got.
Absolutely so. And you you just have to be even more on your tiptoes around this circuit because you know the weather is going to change. All the weather maps are saying there is still more rain on the way. And in fact, as the cars sit on the grid, guess what's happened? It suddenly started pouring again. So where they're sitting, and they now must be thinking, is this just here? Or is this going to be further around the lap? But of course, they have to do a full lap before they come round to the flyer, and the conditions are going to change in that time. You can be absolutely sure of that. This is going to be on a knife edge. And the green flag is waved from the BMW Junior Team. M6 GT3 leads the train of cars out one by one around the circuit. A brief interval between each of those cars. I'd suggest about 10 seconds. Frank Stippler goes off second. The number 11 Phoenix Racing Audi. Then the first of the Ferraris, Luca Ludwig from third.
Waiting for the green flag to be pointed vaguely in his direction. The green damp stick as it is for Octane 126. It'll be Mauro Engel who goes off at next for the Haupt Racing Mercedes number 6. That's the dark blue and orange car. Engel for Team HRT, just feeling his way through the first corner. That looks treacherous enough. Jesse Krohn for BMW in the number 20 M6 GTE. Then it's going to be Dennis Olsen for Frickadelli, both of the Frickadelli, the 30 and the 31. Aberlin racing cars together on the grid. Windscreen wipers on full now. Really, really nasty conditions. And whereas before, Peter, you might have wanted to get a bit of a tour behind somebody, here you want to leave a gap because you absolutely don't want to be in the spray of the car in front.
No, you definitely don't. A little bit like when we see in dusty rallies,
Very much.
You know, they have to give more of a distance to stop the car behind getting caught in the dust clouds. That's definitely going to be a factor today, and the moisture just kind of hangs in the air, and it's going to be a real challenge for these drivers out here today. These tyres of all the manufacturers are very impressive indeed at clearing the water, but we're gonna see who's willing to hang it all out. What I do find interesting is the number 3 Rutronic Porsche. They've elected to have their young charger, the youngest ever Le Mans winner, Julian Andlauer, to go out there, 22 years old, and they've elected to leave Laurent Fantor and Romain Dumas in the garage. So there's a bit of a theme forming that a lot of the teams, particularly on the Porsche side, are putting out their young hard chargers, perhaps just to try and get their mileage up in these conditions, possibly.
Or the fact maybe they don't know what they don't know, so maybe they won't be quite as...
No imagination.
Yes, that's right. Daft as a brush, sent them out in this. The worst we could be is 20th. Go on, off you go. Nick Yellerly in the Rover Racing Oils. The Rover Oils Racing BMW. Massive wheel spin, even off the line. Short shifts through second and third. Axel Jeffries, awesome lap earlier on today, Bruce. The fastest lap of the week so far. That was in very different conditions. The question now, I suppose, is can he do it in these conditions?
Well, I think one thing in his favour was when he managed to set that time, the session had been very static, not much different to the top, and he went 2.5 seconds quicker than anybody else managed in the session, and stole it right at the end, as indeed this did the other Lamborghini, the 63 Lamborghini, which only now is just powering off the start straight. So they both managed to top a session right at the end. So the speed in the cars, but how much time have they had on track as wet as this?
No,
none.
No, correct. Absolutely. It is going to be, as I said, a voyage of discovery, and this is where the drivers earn their corn. You either like racing in the wet or you don't. You don't. It's like you like racing in the dark or you don't. And they say in a lot of sports that bad weather is a great leveler. Football pitch perhaps slows down the quicker players, means the older and wider, not wiser players like me have half a chance when the ball's being knocked past them. You can do the old slide tackle. I'm not sure it's the same in motor racing. Does it level out the performance of the cars? Yes, it possibly does, because you don't necessarily have the advantage of the better chassis or the better engine, because you can't use that performance advantage. But what it is undoubtedly going to come down to in this next 10 or 15 minutes, maybe a little bit more, Bruce, is the nut behind the wheel. This, of all types of conditions, is where the driver is going to make the big difference, because they're reacting to what they find. They can take nothing for granted, and they are going to be living on their wits and their experience.
And I certainly think it's a question of what they find, quite rightly so. And it could be a car sitting sideways across the track. It could be waved yellow flags and their lap will be interrupted. So you'd have to say the advantage is with the car that's starting first. That's Max Hesse, the BMW Junior Team driver. He got the nod over Daniel Harper. Now, it's about getting position as much as anything. You don't want spray in your face. And so the driver not bothering to hang around is Kevin Estre in the Grello, the number 911 Porsche. He's just overtaken Nico Menzel, the 23 Huber Motorsport Porsche. Obviously decided going too slowly. I want to press on. Yeah. Or maybe he's got a word in his ear from an engineer saying, more rain arriving. Get on with it.
I think that's a good point. And whereas we saw people babying the tyres in the dry TQ1 session, just trying to get a heat cycle into them, and make them last for the next 2 laps, which Dries van Toor did better than anybody. I think wherever you are at the moment, and particularly if you're not at the sharp end of the field, you're going to push. You're going to push as hard as you can. You want to get some heat in the tyres. You want to find out what the conditions are like. And if you can get past another car, you'll take that, Peter, because that's one less problem of somebody else's style of problem that you could get caught up in on your own fast lap.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. And I think you've got to get those times in as quick as you physically can and get it on the board, because we just don't know how the conditions are going to change. And Kevin Estre out on track right now, going through Schwedenkors, which is a very, very fast left-hander, and the car is aquaplaning all over the place. Now, if it's aquaplaning for Kevin Estre, it's in the fence for pretty much anybody else. This is where, like you say, you're absolutely right. A lot of these drivers in this top 20 shootout are contracted by Porsche, Audi, Mercedes, BMW, and like you say, they're earning their salary, and they're usually quite flash company car.
Sam Pearce tweets at RSL_studio using the RSLN24 hashtag. Get the feeling somebody could return to the pit lane with just the steering wheel at the end of this. And Morris GTS says, awesome boat racing in the middle of the Eifel. One thing we have to point out, if you're new to this, don't be worried about asking questions. There's no daft questions, by the way. Well, if you're brand new and you're feeling like you need to know a little bit more, it strikes me, if you haven't seen this type of racing before, you've been drawn to this by racing the Nürburgring Nordschleife on iRacing or one of the other sims. The R8s in this are not quattro. 4-wheel drive is not allowed. So all of these cars are rear drive only. They've, depending on who you speak to, got somewhere between 500, north of 500 horsepower. They have got traction control, quite sophisticated traction control, and quite sophisticated ABS. Although in these conditions, I would expect that the more experienced drivers of this caliber, they'll be wanting to feel what the car is doing. So remarkably, they'll be turning certainly the traction control down a little bit, because they'll be worried that it might slow them down or dull the responses to the car if they do want to hold the back end out or spin the back wheels up. It's raining on the Nordschleife. It does look very, very well. It's treacherous. Even get a little bit of temperature inversion, so we've got some low cloud rather than fog even around the circuit at the moment. Remember, this is just the sighting lap. It was BMW Junior Team that went out first in the 77. Then it was Nicky Team for Phoenix Racing GmbH, the Audi R8 number 77. Luca Ludwig for Octane 126 in the Ferrari. Then the Mercedes, Nico Bastian, the number 6 for Team HRT. Jesse Kron for Schubert Motorsport. It is Matty Campbell for the 30 for Cadelli Racing Team Porsche. Dennis Olsen for the 31. And then Frank Stippler. There's the experience there for Audi Sport Team Phoenix in the number 15. He went out 8th. There'll be a bit of shuffling going on out there. Huber Motorsport in the number 23 were next off the line. And that was Nico Menzel behind the wheel of that. Then Kevin Estra for Manthey. Then Dennis Marshall for Phoenix Racing in the 5. Raffaello Marciello for AMG Team Get Speed in the 7. In the number 29, the Audi R8 LMS. That was Kelvin von der Linde in that car. Then Nick Yellerly for Rover Racing's BMW number 1. Lamborghini, Conrad Motorsport, Axel Jeffries in the 19. Julian Andlau for Rutronic in the GT Silver Porsche number 3. Mirko Bortolotti for Hankook Triple F Racing Team. Hankook very proud of their wet weather tyres, by the way. Let me just get that out right now. They have been outstanding ever since they've come into this form of racing, and indeed in IMSA before that. Maury Krantz, Mirko Bortolotti, yes, we mentioned Maury Krantz for Get Speed, and right at the end, it is the number 4 Mercedes Team HRT, the second of their car, Manuel Metzger, behind the wheel of that. So as the first car goes through to start the first flying lap, fingers crossed, eyes down, looking, and the BMW Junior Team number 77 is on the Grand Prix circuit. And now the time for conservativeness, for any kind of I'm just feeling my way in, Bruce, that's gone. Now it's time to push on and find the absolute limit.
Well, that's going to be very, very hard to find. Max Hesse, first of the queue of cars, but I've sensed the 2 drivers who've really got something up their sleeve are further back in the pack, because 2 drivers notably setting a lot of fastest sector times. Raffaele Marcello, who's running in 12th place in this line of car, and 2 places further back, Nick Yellowly in the 2 Rover Racing BMWs. Maybe some of the water has been shifted by the cars ahead of them, or maybe the weather's slightly improving at the back, or maybe they were taking the biggest risk. We have got a car in the pits. Luca Ludwig's bought the Octane 126 Ferrari in, and one of the Fricadelli cars as well. 30. Matt Campbell, they're obviously not going to go for slicks,
but they've changed their decision on whatever rubber it was. So have they gone to a more extreme wet? In terms of the grooves, the sipes on the tyres, it's very hard to tell. So that could be a compound change. More than one wet weather tyre available from all the tyre manufacturers here. The problem with that is, Duncan, is that they've just given up that lap, and they will fall to the back and have to wait for the green light to come back on at the end of pit lane, which it does now. So just one flying lap now. They will get another warm-up lap to complete, but then they're going to have to deal with whatever the conditions are like in 10 minutes' time.
And like we say, it's evolving all the time, and at the moment the rain is clattering down. So I would be very much in the camp of get the lap time on the scoreboard as quickly as you possibly can, because who knows, if it gets particularly bad, the organisers could throw a flag and that's it. So I think getting the lap times on very, very important indeed. And this is where the experience here, we've talked about Frank Stippler as well. And I wonder, is there anything in, we've got some cars which are powered by naturally aspirated engines and some are powered by turbocharged engines. Now, in the old days, turbocharged engines could be a little bit lively in these conditions. Is that a thing of the past now with turbocharged technology, or do you still want to be in the predictability of a naturally aspirated, do you think?
Smaller turbos nowadays tend to spin up quicker, and multiple smaller turbos much better. It's not the press and weight that you used to have on a tuned Renault 5, as I remember one of my friends Bruce up in the northeast. You pressed and then you could read a chapter of your book before the power came in. It's not like that nowadays. it's a much more linear, and some would even say actually that the response you get at the bottom end from these small twin turbos, which some of them are very cleverly set up to produce their power at slightly different times. It's all clever stuff. Magnificent driving out there at the moment. Nicky T is on the absolute ragged edge, as is Max Hesse for BMW. But Nicky T coming into Arenberg at the top of the foxhole a moment or two ago was dancing the car around on the top of a layer of water. Complete aquaplanage as he was coming into the braking area. But Bruce, he looked like he was on top of it. It didn't look untidy. He just looked like he was putting as few control inputs into it as he possibly could.
Don't panic, don't panic. It was a very good idea at the outset of the corner, I think, is the message the drivers have to go with. I'm still getting my head around those two cars pitting for wet, different sort of wet weather tyres. Either it's a masterstroke, but they've just upped the ante, the pressure on themselves. They are only going to have this out lap and then a chance for one flying lap. With the other drivers here, they can just have a little bit in hand, a tiny little bit, which is all you could afford in GT3 competition, and afford to do 2 flying laps. I sense the weather is improving. Certainly the onboard footage is showing sky that's much lighter than it was just at the start of this final qualifying session. So have those 2-3 teams that pitted really wreck their chance. Driver who's really setting some quick times at the moment is running 4th on the track. It's Nico Bastian in the number 6 HRT Mercedes, and he's got 2 consecutive pink sectors on his time. So I sense he's going to be good, and he's certainly delivering right now. But further down the charts, Raffaele Marciello takes those 2 purple sector times away from him. So despite starting all the way down, 12th out of the 20 runners, I think Marciello could be going to the top of the charts by the end of this lap. But if you're half a lap to go, you've still got 12 kilometres worth of potential mistakes that you could make.
It's all about concentration, and we've seen people crash in these sessions before. You don't want to give the guys a sleepless night the night before the race. There is a warm-up tomorrow, and we'll cover that for you, actually. It may be even more significant than usual if somebody does bend a car. Nico Bastian in the number 6 AMG Team HRT looks to be staying towards the middle of the road. Oh, it's a big swapper on as he heads over the far side of the circuit, just starting to climb the hill. And Bastian fighting it now. He's just come out of Bergwerk and climbing the hill through those consecutive left-handers. And the last one, you've really got to get that one right because it tightens on the exit. He's following the tracks in the road that have been left by the previous car. Raffaele Marciello is a little further around the circuit, is he? That number 7 car. No, he's a little bit further back, my apologies. Started later on, he's still coming down the hill at the hairpin before the bridge at Arenberg. At ADAC, excuse me. And he's starting to catch the car in front of him. Now that was Dennis Marshall in the Phoenix Audi, and there's just a little bit of spray ahead of him, and that is the Audi. And here's the issue, Peter, that if you do get behind somebody, you're going to struggle to pick a place to get by.
Absolutely, and your field of vision obviously very much impaired.
And that's what's happened to Yellowly as well.
Oh, now these 2 cars had a bit of a ding-dong in practice. The number 23 car is a Porsche. Nico Menzel, Huber Motorsport. There is no love lost between the number 1 BMW and the 23 Porsche. That's this, and you know it's the same corner. I was having deja vu there.
It is.
At Adenauer-Forst.
Yeah.
What's interesting though, guys, is that all of a sudden Mercedes have been very quiet in the dry, and the heavens have opened, and the Mercedes boys are all of a sudden they're absolutely flying in these very different conditions.
Oh, this is, I mean, it's cringingly brilliant to watch, Bruce, isn't it? It's, you know how frightened I am of heights. I have a morbid dislike of heights, and when I see something, or when I get up high and I have to look down, my toes literally curl in and grab what I'm standing on. And it's kind of like that right now. But the very worst thing you can do in a car in these conditions is get tight. You've got to stay loose and stay with the car and not fight it.
John, back in the 1980s, there was a series of sort of sports psychology books, and it was called Inside, and then you insert name of the sport. And I always remember their advice for skiing on ice was to think your toes were like butterflies, because otherwise they became like horses' hooves and you couldn't turn your boots and couldn't turn your skis. It's a hard thing to do, but think light, think butterflies. I think that's exactly the right advice for this. Oh, and be bloody good in the wet.
Yes. It is just about trying to feel everything. Even with all the electronics, the complex electronics on these cars, it's about what you're feeling through your fingers and what you're feeling through your backside. Kevin Estre has caught Frank Stippler. Well, that's interesting. So he's made up the time there, and Estre drove by out of the carousel as they were heading up the hill to the two uphill left-handers. The Porsche engine at the back, of course, and still the traditional engine at the back. Porsche, the GT3 version of this car, this version of the car. Everything in Porsche is GT Porsche speak, but this has still got the traditional engine and gearbox layout. It's not the swapped around version that the GTEs are, so that they could have a bigger diffuser where normally there would have been mechanical bits. So they will have some traction advantage coming out of the slower and medium speed corners. And interestingly, of course, that pass on Stippler was made coming out of the Caracciola carousel and punching up the hill. Well, let's see what Max Hesse can do. We had an 8, just over an 8:10, didn't we? It's going to be a 10:23, 2 and a bit minutes slower. Nicky Team immediately goes to the top for Phoenix Racing, 10:19. That's the time to beat. He's Nico Bastian coming through. See if they all go for a second lap as well. That's the other thing to look for. Bastian to the top by 9 seconds, 10 minutes 10. So the Mercedes has come alive in the wet. Speaking to Adam Christodoulou, he was rather hoping it was going to be as hot could be. They felt that was their best chance. Maybe the wet weather is playing to the big front-engined AMG's strength. Dennis Olsen in the wheel tracks of Raffaele Marciello, or is that the other way around? My apologies. Now, let's not forget, Bruce Jones, that we had people pit at the end of their first flying lap. So some of the times we see will be off just a wee bit on this lap, but they change to a different compound of wet, seeing how bad the conditions were out on the Nordschleife. So their second laps should be, of course, a lot better.
Well, I tell you, it's already working for Axel Jeffries, the Conrad Motorsport Lamborghini driver. He's come out of the pits and he's bagged in the fastest first sector, fastest second sector, fastest third sector. We're not talking by tenths of a second here. He's clearly shifting an awful lot of water. This lap won't really count. It's not a flying lap, but the sector times are phenomenal for the Conrad car. So certainly they've guessed absolutely right. Got the right sort of Michelins on. And we'll see how they go. Of course, the sister Lamborghini, well, it's not the sister Lamborghini, it's another Lamborghini, but the FFF Racing one also made a pit stop, but that's changing one set of, not Michelins to Michelins, but Hankooks to even heavier rain Hankooks. And we'll see how Bortolotti gets that wound up. But right now, Jeffries is lighting things up. But this lap, as I pointed out, won't count for lap time because it started from the pit lane.
Correct.
It's too long. You're only allowed 4 minutes in pit lane, and he's been in for 8, so he's done.
Right. See, our man with all the tech regs there, Peter McCart.
Oh, who was that? Bortolotti?
Yeah.
Right.
Bortolotti, yeah. And also remember, but that's puzzling because Hankook were complaining about not having enough wet weather running. Maybe they feel they just want to keep the car in good condition until tomorrow and just hope it doesn't rain. That's a little bit of a cloud, no pun intended. There's a bit of a cloud over that team now.
Can't start any worse than 20th. Actually, we've only had 19 cars out. So who have we missed? Only 19 cars have set sector times by my screen.
Henry Walkenhorst hasn't gone out. Car number 100 in the Pro-Am class.
Good spot, Bruce.
Spot the man paying the bill.
Yeah, I think that's...
Yes.
Again, you know, what's the worst thing that can happen? Oh, you can start 20th. That's not the worst thing that can happen at all. If you go out, what's the worst thing that can happen? Well, the best thing that could happen is you could start on pole. Is that realistic? Probably not. What's the worst thing that could happen? We could end up not making the race tomorrow. Shall we just leave it there and head to the piston clouser for a nice steak? Ah, great idea. Let's go. Nick Yellerly on the Grand Prix circuit has gone to the top, 10.05. So the later runners here, Bruce, have got slightly better conditions. It may be that they went for the more extreme tyres from the start as well, of course. That's something that we can only speculate upon. But Yellerly at the moment with an impressive 5-second gap to Nico Bastian, who has 3/100ths of a second on Raffaele Marciello. Rover Racing number 1, BMW. From then, 4 AMG GT3s from HRT, Get Speed, HRT and Get Speed. They've done a cracking job here, Bruce, in the big front-engined AMGs.
Yeah, and it looks as though maybe that's going to be that for Marciello, because he curled round the back and came in the back entrance to the pits by the looks of things. But certainly I felt on that first flying lap that those at the back half of the train had a bit of an advantage, because any sighting of these cars, they're kicking up so much water off the track, and I think it was just a little bit drier for them. A lot of water had been dispersed by the first 10, 15 cars ahead of them, and certainly Nick Yellerly, who's now top, and Raffaele Marciello, who is in third place, benefited from that, I'm sure of it.
Yeah, but not for long, Bruce. Axel Jeffries is giving it everything. Remember, he stopped at the end of his familiarization lap, which effectively negated his first flying lap. There was a change of tyres by the Conrad Racing team in that Miami blue. I still think of that as Leighton House March, that colour. It is so reminiscent of that. Remember those cars at Le Mans as well? I lusted after one of their paddock jackets. Never did get one. Jeffries then setting magenta sectors all the way through. He's got a couple of personal bests in there, but that, of course, is off the back of a somewhat exploratory first lap. Now he's up to speed and absolutely hauling the meal. This will be a very interesting first lap time, because he is massively quick in the sectors, and he will get one more go. So he's into the 9s. This is not from his pit lap though, is it? Yes, it is.
This is a flyer, and I think this will be his one and only since he came back into the pits. But I think, didn't Conrad Motorsports run the Leighton House Porsche back in the 80s, possibly? I seem to recall, but this, I mean,
they had some paint. Well, that would be France all over, wouldn't it, Bruce?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not saying
man
anything.
Of the meeting so far for me, this young man, this young Zimbabwean.
Who's this? Axel Jeffries, yeah?
Yeah.
Comes across the line. Thank you very much. 10 minutes, 3.927. Jeffries, after the stunning lap in the dry conditions earlier on today, he's repeated it. Wet or dry, rain or shine, number 1 for Axel Jeffries. 001 on the top right-hand side of the screen. A 10.03.927 is nearly 2 seconds better than Nick Yellerly. Extraordinary stuff. We've still got cars out there. Raffaele Marciello, no, he's pitted. Luca Ludwig is pitted. Jesse Kron's still out there, and he's put in a fast 5th sector, and he was 2 seconds quicker than Jeffries in that sector alone. So keep an eye on that one for Jesse Kron in the number 20 Schubert Motorsport. Here's Kelvin van der Linde to the line for Audi. Not going to trouble the sharp end of the field. Crosses the line now and clocks a 10.21. And he will therefore drop into 11th place for Audi Sport Team Lance, the number 29 car. Remember their victory here changed tyre suppliers leading up to that race. Weather changed in the dying moments of the race. They came in, made a right horlicks of their pit stop, thought they'd put the wrong tyres on. They weren't used to the nomenclature of the new tyre supplier. Ended up being the right tyre, won the race. Brilliant stuff.
Watch out for Yeloli. He's second fastest at the moment. He had the fastest lap until Jeffries took it away from him. But sector 4, sector 5, sector 6, this 9-sector circuit. It's the BMW number 1 that is setting the pace. Can it topple the Zimbabwean? We'll see. But the driver from Solihull, Nick Yeloli, really flying. Also going very well. Another BMW out there on the circuit. And that is down the order in 12th at the moment. But Max Hesse, the BMW Junior team, may be able to get into the top 10. But conditions changing, John, all the time.
Just waiting for the next set of times from Yeloli. Jeffries, as we expected, has dropped back into the pit lane. So the 10:03.9, that is their gambit. Max Hesse fighting the 77 BMW as he's in the last couple of sectors. Oh my goodness, gets a huge slide on as he comes out of the Gallows Hill corner onto the Dottinger Höhe. Just waiting for Nick Yeloli. He's set 3 magenta times in the middle of the lap, and his early pace was good on the Grand Prix circuit, but he saved some tyre life. He saved some bravery for later on in the lap. Max Hesse will come to the line next. He's under the Bilstein Bridge and heading down the hill. How brave is he in the braking area? Nico Bastian now on the Dottinger Höhe as well for AMG Team HRT in the number 6. He's now under the bridge, heading up to the last heavy braking area. And they still brake insanely late for Tiergarten and the final chicane. Max Hesse, will he move up? Comes across the line. There's Nicky Team going through to 8th position for Phoenix. Hesse, by the way, 10th for BMW Junior Team. Nico Bastian is... Now, where's Bastian's time gone?
4th.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
What's happened, John? He's just been overtaken by Jesse
Krohn
for Schubert Motorsports, gone into 3rd place. So it's BMW 2nd and 3rd.
Then Mercedes. But Lamborghini still at the head of the field. Only Nick Yeloli, who I think can challenge this time of Axel Jeffries. Waiting to see the 7th sector. Dennis Olsen, I'm waiting to see him come through. Porsche nowhere tonight in this bad weather. I thought they might have shone, but a lot of wheel spin from Dennis from the Fricadelli number 31 car as he comes on to the start-finish line. And at the moment, the best Porsche is 11th, and Kevin Estre will stay there as Olsen can't overtake him on the timing screen. Porsche's 11th, 12th, Andlau is the fastest Porsche for Rutronic in 9th, 11th, 12th, and 18th for Matt Campbell, who bailed out early. Yeloli coming to the end of his lap now. Wasn't a great 7th sector, but it wasn't bad. Oh, big slide. Stippler comes through, 14th. Here's Yeloli. Can he go? The top he can. BMW's on pole. BMW is on pole. Applause from the team in the garage. And the defending race winners have put it on pole in the most extraordinary conditions. The man from the West Midlands, who will have hardly ever driven in the wet in his life back in his hometown, has taken pole position. I jest, of course. Nick has done good in footy speak. 10 minutes, 1.619 seconds. That, Bruce Jones, was a lap to be proud of by Nick Yeloli.
It was 2 laps to be proud of. He did one that was a very representative time, top 3 time, but it just kept on coming. And through the second half of the lap, he picked off those sectors one after another. And checking that long 7th sector, he did it in 3 minutes and 10 seconds. I said it was a long sector. It's like a lap at another circuit, but most of his rivals were doing 3:16s, 3:18s. It showed the level of commitment. And you know what? Being buoyed up by winning this race last year, staying with the same team with Rover Racing, he's been getting great results for BMW, but 2.3 seconds, that is definitely a huge pat on the back. We talked about the pressure, racing on a knife edge out on the circuit, conditions changing all the time, but he didn't put a wheel wrong. Phenomenal lap.
So, my goodness me, Manuel Metzger has survived. It comes round, it's tipping down on the front straight again. I'll be honest, I think if the weather had been like this when we'd started, we wouldn't have started. Sorry, that was a bit convoluted, but you know what I mean. Certainly, I'm not sure we would have had a race restart with 20, 30 cars going across the line together. Our commentary points used to be down towards the end of the pit lane in the Aston Martin suite before they went back to the TUV Tower a couple of years ago. And I well remember seeing a restart from there where we literally couldn't see the other side of the track every time the cars went by. There was so much spray. And in fact, that was the area I was working out of last year for Audi TV. So at 8:30 in the evening, we have set the grid for the 49th running of the ADAC 24 hours of the Nürburgring, and it will be Rover Racing. It will be Rover Racing on pole position. Then after that outstanding couple of laps from Nick Yellerly, the Brit putting the number 1 car in the number 1 position. Axel Jeffries will be alongside him, or at least Conrad Motorsport will be. They thought they had it. They were quickest in the drive earlier on, but with some good wet weather running as well, they have got to be considered as a major contender in the Lamborghini Huracan number 19. Manuel Metzger coming through right at the end. He was the last man to start that TQ2 session, and he will start on the inside of the second row. At least his team car will. It might not be Manuel behind the wheel. That's Team HRT. The Haupt car will be right up there, the number 4 machine. Then it's Jesse Kronv and Schubert Motorsport qualifying 4th for the BMW number 20. Mercedes-AMG teams HRT are next up in 5th position on the inside of row 3 with the number 6 car, and it's Team Get Speed for the AMG concern in 7th position. In 6th position for the number 7. Then another Mercedes. Maury Krantz did the time for Get Speed. He'll start 7th in the number 9, ahead of Nicky Team, or alongside Nicky Team for Phoenix Racing in the Audi. That's the number 11. Top 10 made up by the number 3 Rutronic Racing Porsche and the number 77 BMW Junior Team BMW. Then beyond that, it's Mantheiss 9, 11 and 11. Fricadelli's 9, 11, number 31 in 12th. Audi Sports with Team Lander 29 car in 13th. Frank Stippler's experience could only bring 14th for the number 15 Audi Sport Team Phoenix. Then it's Huber Motorsports Porsche number 23 and 15. Dennis Marshall kept the Phoenix Racing Audi number 5 on the island and that car will start from 16th. 17th, Luca Ludwig's Octane 126 AG Ferrari number 26. Then Campbell for Fricadelli Racing in the number 30. Mirko Bortolotti for Lamborghini, and as we heard, Henry Valkenhorst thought better of going around. I know Malcolm Cracknell, the founding editor of a Daily Sports Car, is watching and listening, and I'm sure he enjoyed that. That, Bruce Jones, that was proper. That was a real challenge, and that is where the cream has risen to the top in terms of the drivers. They have earned their steak dinner tonight.
They certainly have, and as the skies still threaten I could watch a full series of that, a race series of qualifying laps in very dodgy weather around the Nordschleife. It could have a future, but no, bring on the 24 hours. And those conditions were so difficult, changing all the time. And the fact the drivers knew they either had one, or if they were lucky, 2 flying laps in which to show us what they could do, and or more importantly, show us that they wouldn't be making any mistakes. Great session.
And Peter, it could have been carnage. It could have been carnage. It's a mark of the skill of the drivers in TQ2 there, with a complete change. Even the guys who'd just been out, the teams that had just been out, the drivers weren't allowed to take the second part. They had to have another one of their teammates. But even that, it was no use to the teams. There was nothing that the outgoing drivers could give their teammates. That was extraordinary. Not a single car off the track.
Well, there was a very popular documentary series that was released a couple of months ago that said the Formula One grid, these are the very best drivers in the world. Well, I would contest that with this clip of tonight's session as my evidence, because every driver in each of the cars that went out in that session really did show their ungodly talent behind the wheel of these cars. And what I found interesting as well is that the form book was completely flipped on its head. For example, the Falcon Porsches were the quickest of all the Porsches coming into this session. They're nowhere. They're going to start really deep in the pack tomorrow. They're going to start outside the top 30, which is something I didn't think we'd be saying. We're not going to have any Porsches starting in the top 10. The Mercedes all of a sudden came alive in the rain. But really, I think what we can take away from today, for me already, man of the meeting, Axel Jeffries, the young Zimbabwean in that Lamborghini, 2 storming laps today in both dry and the wet. And, well, in fact, that's been one of the cars that's really shown pace in both sets of conditions.
That's a very good point that Peter Mackay makes. Bruce Jones was adding the benefit of his experience with me, John Hindhaugh. Great thanks to Hugh up in London, who kept us on the air, to Michael, Nico, Reddy and the rest of the team giving us fabulous pictures to watch. We've got warm-up in the morning. Check the websites for details. Have a great Friday evening. From John Hindhaugh and the rest of the team. Bye-bye.